This is Fight Fans Radio.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Untethered MMA on Fight Fans Radio. It is Valentine's Day 2013. If you want to reach the show, you can call us at 410-988-6525. And you can reach the three of us on Twitter. You can reach me at It's Mike Fagan. You can reach Derek Suboticki at FightLinker Subo. And you can reach Matt Roth at MattRoth512. Derek Suboticki probably not joining us today. He has class, and because we have a special early edition, because our producer has to go meet a special someone tonight, it is unlikely he'll be here. But Matt, I got you. So
yeah, what's up, baby cakes? What's up, sweetie?
We're doing good, right?
Yeah, man. Happy Valentine's Day, sweetie.
Happy Valentine's Day, my man. I just ran from work because I forgot that we were going to have to either do it early or not do it at all today. So I'm kind of getting settled here. What are your plans for Valentine's Day, Matt?
Man, so my plans are this. Valentine's Day, it works out for two different people. So Valentine's Day, it works for those of you that are coupled up. You get to have that romantic dinner at the with a price fixed menu. Don't really get to choose what you want to eat. You get to have basically wedding fare of chicken or steak, maybe fish, and maybe a salad if you're vegan or vegetarian. For those of us that are not coupled up, Valentine's Day is also awesome because you get to go to a bar and all of the depressed girls they're single and all their friends are hanging out with their mans. Those girls are looking for something, and it's something that I got.
So is this
free drinks? I got free drinks for them.
Is this a Valentine's Day tradition for you?
I think it's a Valentine's Day tradition for every single male.
See, I don't think it's ever worked for me.
You've never lived.
Well, there is one story that I can't really tell on air because it's very... it makes me look really bad.
Here's the thing. You can say it.
I can't. I will tell you later, but I cannot say it on the air.
Okay, how about this?
To all 20 people that are listening, I'm sorry.
You type it in the chat box, and then I'll say it.
No. Absolutely not.
No, it's totally different that way.
If you had just said type it in the box, I might have done it, and then you could have said it on air, but you blew your own cover.
See, I was trying this whole thing called honesty.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that a lot. Yeah, I'm actually one of the coupled ones, which is the first time for me in about 5 years. And my plan is to go to my girlfriend's house, pay her massage therapist roommate $45 to give me a massage.
And then another $45 to get one of them happy endings.
That's what I'm hoping for. And then we will be going out tomorrow night instead of tonight, because why deal with the horse shit that's going to happen tonight? Go out tomorrow. No one's going to be out. It's going to be a lot more enjoyable. And there you go.
That sounds super fun.
Yeah, it is. I'm really looking forward to it. Also, a note for the listeners, our producer is going to be running out to run errands for 30 minutes here. So if anything happens, the show's fucked, pretty much.
So no calling in.
Yeah, don't call in. That number I gave you, disregard that. Do not call in because no one will pick up. And let's move around. And in the theme of Valentine's Day, Matt, some big news this week. Comcast and Fox finally are reaching a deal. It's going to put fuel in Comcast homes, which for a lot of us in Comcast markets like myself has been sort of a bane. And also probably going to line them up for whatever happens to fuel and speed when they become Fox Sports 1 and 2.
So here's the thing. What does that have to do with Valentine's Day?
Because it's a match made in heaven. It's a coming together. It's a coupling.
Man, I set that up perfectly, didn't I? I set them up, you knock them down.
Yep. But pretty big news.
That's big news on the UFC's part. You know what's surprising though, and this is going to come off really, really poorly. In the past, this would have warranted a phone call, like a conference call, or like a whole press conference, like when they announced toys.
Well, the weird thing to me was it was announced sometime in the afternoon yesterday, a little bit before the press conference for the Fuel Show on Saturday. And I understand that there's not a lot of American media there. I'm pretty sure I heard John Morgan ask a few questions, but it didn't. And I missed the second half of it, but it didn't seem like anyone asked Dana about it, which sort of surprised me because it seems like big enough news. Even for the handful or less than a handful of American guys there reporting.
I mean, it's big news for the UFC for sure, because Comcast they're the biggest provider, or they're the second biggest. I can't remember. In the United States, is them and Time Warner are basically 1 and 2, and so like you're looking at those fuel ratings that everybody kind of jokes about being abysmal but amazing for fuel. Like fuel cards they just got kicked up a notch as far as ratings go. That's really big news for the UFC because like I brought it up on the show a couple of times, but like the fuel cards are where they find their most success as far as the day-to-day fuel ratings, and then the UFC's programming. The fuel cards are their most successful as far as percentage increase in viewership. So if you're going from 15,000 to 150,000 or 200,000, whatever the hell the fuel cards usually do, by adding Comcast, those cards just they explode.
Yeah, I think I want to say I read somewhere that this deal increases the homes that fuels in by like 50% or something, which is a huge number.
Yeah, that's a number.
It's interesting too. I don't know. I'm getting the feeling that it's not going to. We're not going to see fuel on Comcast in Comcast homes before Saturday, but it should be in time for the next couple of fuel shows. And the fuel shows coming up, especially that Japan show, are really good cards, and I expect to see that Japan show do a pretty good number.
Yeah, I mean, and that's that's what I'm saying. Like the Mark Munoz and Chris Weidman show, that was on Fuel, right?
Yes. Because that was the big deal that Weidman was potentially in line for a title shot, but they kind of buried him on Fuel where no one's going to see it. Yeah,
but still, even in spite of that, that card still did relatively well for Fuel. I believe it did like 250,000 viewers, which it doesn't sound like a lot, but when normal Fuel programming does 12,000, that's massive.
Yeah. And speaking of Fuel and the card I just referenced, there's a show this Saturday in Ireland. Is that correct? Somewhere in the UK.
In London.
It's in London?
Yep.
Oh, well, that shows how much I know about this event.
You are totally wrong.
Yeah, I'm totally off. I don't know why I thought it was in Ireland.
It's actually an amazing venue too, Wembley Arena.
Have you been to Wembley Arena?
No, but I've watched videos of Queen performing at Wembley Stadium, and I'm assuming it's the same.
I have a feeling it's not the same. Although I have also seen that same footage of Queen playing Wembley Stadium, and it is awesome.
And it's amazing.
It is amazing. It's an okay show. It's I assume if you're in England or if for some reason you're a big English MMA fan, it's probably a better show. I just kind of want to run through the top 2 fights. The first being the Henan Bahau fight, fighting Michael McDonald for the interim title. One thing that's kind of struck me is with Cruz out and with this interim title looking like it's going to be almost semi-permanent until Cruz comes back or decides to retire, I would go as far as saying is that bantamweight right now is probably the worst division in the UFC, just in terms of following it and it being the sort of knowledge that the casual fan has about it. Because you just had Demetrius Johnson and John Dodson fight for the flyweight title, which in my mind would have been the worst division prior to this. But they got that recognition on Fox.
Here's the issue with, and I brought it up before. I brought it up on past shows. Dominic Cruz, from where his injury to when he's going to return, you're looking at like two years off, 2 whole years off, because he was a coach on that 13-week season of The Ultimate Fighter Live, and then he got injured, while training during that show. It's really, really, really disappointing to think that a champion can be out indefinitely. Like, let's say his rehab goes, terribly, and instead of 2 years, he needs to get another surgery on his knee, and then he's out for another year. Are you telling me that they're not going to strip him of the title?
Right, and that I did hear a little bit of Dana talking about that. It was weird. He admitted that they would consider stripping him at that point, but even then, he's still sort of stuck by his whole thing was that you have to beat the man. Basically, the Ric Flair, you have to beat the man to be the man. What you're saying.
But I'm okay with. But like, here's my big issue, and it's not even that you're putting the title on hold, because obviously now they're defending it, and if Cruz is out until November, December, like that's when his rehab should be done, and then he has to do another camp, and then he has to do a camp to prepare. I'm okay if they have Henan Barao defended a couple of times. My issue is that when Dominic Cruz comes back, he's going to have to face Henan Barao, who he's a really, really, really tough matchup, like a super tough matchup on 2.5 years of ring rust, or on a knee that may not be able to actually work with his style of boxing, with bouncing back and forth and being a maniac on his feet, like the Dominic Cruz footwork. He may not be able to do that.
Yeah, that was the one thing I've been talking about with people is, I had the same issue when GSP came back to fight Condit, and that was a little bit different of a situation. He wasn't out for, he's not going to be out for 2 years. And it will be 2 years for Cruz, October 1st of this year. GSP doesn't necessarily rely so much on speed. Obviously, he's a tremendous athlete, which is part of the reason why he's able to come back as quickly and as effectively as he was. But being out for 2 years, even disregarding the actual injury, but just being out of the game for 2 years and having to come back and fight whoever the top guy is at the time, if you're in Cruz's camp, like I wouldn't. I mean, there's obviously the public or perspective of you want to fight the top guy and you don't want to look like a chump, but I would want my guy to have a tune-up fight just to make sure that he knows, that he can trust his surgery, the surgery on his knees, that he's mentally there. In Chicago, we're dealing with Derrick Rose being out with a torn ACL. He's coming back, and it's one of those things where he's saying he could come back with in 2 weeks. He might take the rest of the season off. He feels okay mentally, but he's not 100% there. And if I'm Cruz, I want that kind of fight to kind of make sure that I'm ready to fight the top guy.
Yeah, I mean, and there's no shame in doing that. Like, to me, that would be the most responsible thing that the UFC could do with Dominic Cruz, because he's super young, I believe. Like, what is he? He's
27 right now. If he came back this year, he would just have turned 28. His birthday's in September, which sucks for him. I mean, he's basically losing 26 to 28 or 26 to 29, and that's I mean, that's literally the prime of your athletic career.
Yeah, I mean, your prime extends to to your to 32, but it's a huge part of his prime. I would, if I'm Dominic Cruz, I would relinquish the belt, and when I come back, I want to fight somebody like Scott Jorgensen or Brian Bowles or some
two guys which he's already fought before, but
yeah, but it doesn't matter. Let him
right.
Let him pick up that win and get his confidence back because. Look, he's
also too.
He's a fighter. He's got swagger, but like, dude, your knee is your knee, and his entire way of fighting is based on being able to bounce off that knee. That's his entire style is being able to bounce off his knee, and we saw it doesn't work all the time with bigger fighters when Travis Brown tried doing the exact same thing to Bigfoot, and he blew out his knee.
And it's another thing too. Even you said kind of getting that win out of the way. It's actually just as helpful if he loses. I mean, if he loses to a guy that's sort of in that middle tier or lower in the top 10, it's a better bet for him than going up against a guy like Bahau, who's a dangerous fighter and potentially getting himself hurt.
Yeah, and like that's a huge potential. It's not like maybe Renan Barão has you say. Bahau, I say Barão, whatever.
It's Brazilian, son.
Yeah, but I think they pronounce that R.
Whatever.
Yeah, Renan Barão, that guy has crazy ass kicks. Like he chopped Uriah Faber up.
Who hasn't though, right?
I mean, two people have. It's Jose Aldo and this guy named Renan Barão. But you don't think that Barão's going to do the exact same thing to Dominic Cruz, except Dominic Cruz has no knee.
Right.
Come on.
But speaking of Barão, we'll move on to the actual fight. He's going to fight Michael McDonald. McDonald is only 22 years old. He's got a 15-1 record, and he's coming off of a win over Miguel Torres almost a year ago, just over 10 months ago, where he put Miguel Torres out. Obviously, the big question. Obviously, the big question with McDonald, and the one that people like to ask, is obviously he's talented. Obviously, he's going to be a top guy or a top 10 guy for a little while here. But is he ready to make this jump from the guys he has been fighting to a guy like Renan Barão?
Oh, I don't know. I think that he's displayed. A lot of the abilities that that kind of make you think that he can hang with the top of the division. But I mean, you also have to figure that bantamweight isn't exactly the deepest weight class to begin with anyway. Michael McDonald, he's 22 and he's arguably the third best bantamweight in the world.
Yeah.
He has a win over Miguel Torres, and that's his biggest win of his career. He has other wins over like Chris Carriazo and Edwin Figueroa, but like those aren't great wins. His big name win was Miguel Torres. I think he just kind of fell into you're the only other guy that we have that can fight Renan Barão, so you're taking the fight. A win over Barão would definitely cement him as being the top dog, though. I think that he has the power in his hands to put people to sleep, and his grappling is solid. So, like, to me, both Barão and McDonald are nightmare matchups for Dominic Cruz.
Yeah, and the funny thing too, we talk about how young McDonald is, but Barão is only 25 himself. He's got almost double the fights, or he has double the fights that McDonald has. This will be his 32nd bout, and it's kind of the same situation with Renan though. When he first got into the WEC and first came over to the UFC, he had an inflated record fighting a bunch of guys in Brazil that don't have Wikipedia pages, and then he picked up a couple wins against Anthony Leone, Chris Carriazo, Cole Escovedo. And then that's when he stepped up. He fought Brad Pickett, Scott Jorgensen, Uriah Faber in a row. And that's kind of where he cemented his place as the interim title holder or the number one guy, depending on how you want to rank Cruz at this point or if you rank him at all. So for me, it's hard to pick against Barão because he's a little more proven. We know a little bit more about him. But, McDonald just might be that talented, and if we see that on Saturday, I agree with you. I don't think I have any problem saying that he's the top guy at bantamweight.
No, there's no argument there. I think that the interesting thing is outside of Barao and McDonald, the rest of the division is kind of in a state of flux just because, like, Uriah Faber's, according to the UFC rankings, which are done by media, so like this needs to be, these are by journalists. Renan Barao is number one outside of the so the way that the rankings are done is the champion gets listed as champion, and then it's basically the top 10 of everybody else. So Renan Barao is number one, Michael McDonald is number two, Faber is number three, Eddie Wineland's number four, Brad Pickett's number five, Brian Bowles is number six, Rafael Assunção is number seven, Scott Jorgensen's number eight, Mike Easton's nine, and Ivan Menjivar's number 10. Outside of Renan and Michael McDonald, like who's left, really?
I think Wineland's the only guy on that list.
You know, I mean, like Brad Pickett just got annihilated by Eddie Wineland. Brian Bowles hasn't fought since getting shit kicked by Faber. Faber hasn't fought since getting shit kicked by Barao. Assunção sucks. Like his fights suck. Like, he wins. But, okay, no, when I say sucks, he's boring as shit. Like, he wins. He's boring. Scott Jorgensen, he's good. Mike Easton, every single fight of his looks like a sparring session. And Ivan Menjivar, he probably should be a flyweight.
Yeah, and, I was saying Wineland's probably the next guy. I have to imagine whoever wins this fight is going to fight Eddie Wineland next. And the crazy thing about that is... a year ago or 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, he's came off losses to Uriah Faber and Joseph Benavidez, a guy who's now fighting at flyweight. And that's I think that puts your point into perspective here that, even the probable top challenger to the guy who wins on Saturday is still...
He's on a 2-fight win streak.
Yeah, I got solid guys. I mean, Jorgensen and Pickett are two guys that have been kind of in that pool of talent at bantamweight for a while now, but... like again, the loss to Benavidez. I mean, obviously Benavidez is super talented, but just on looks, losing to a guy who's now fighting a weight class below isn't on a good look for you.
But here's a real question though: is Brian Bowles still alive? No, but I'm not being a dick about that. I'm actually wondering because he fought Faber UFC 139. Which was November 2011.
Let's see if I can. I want to say. He was hurt or something or maybe he was taking time off. I don't know. I'm not seeing anything on Google right away. There is a Brian Bowles that has an IMDb page though. I don't think it's the same guy though.
Probably not the same guy. Like really, like his Wikipedia, he has nothing. He has nothing on his Wikipedia. The last thing it says is Brian faced off against Uriah Faber on November 19th, 2011 at UFC 139. He lost the fight by submission in the second round. That's it. Homeboy does not have anything lined up. Yet somehow, and this is now going back to those UFC rankings I was just talking about, he's still ranked in the top 10.
Yeah, this is weird. I can't find anything about it either.
He's still number 6 in the top 10 rankings.
Here we go.
Assunção, Jorgensen, Easton, and Menjivar.
Here we go, Matt. I found an underground thread titled "What is up with Brian Bowles?" This is from 2 days ago, so this is good timing. Is he hurt? Did he retire? Or was he taking times off? He hasn't fought in a while. Still training. My son's wrestling coach is Jeff Bedard, and Bowles shows up to train at the compound sometimes. Wow, there's no information at all.
So there's nothing, and somehow he's the 6th best bantamweight in the world.
That's insane.
Or in the UFC, however you want to put it. Like, And that kind of goes on to the other thing, which we didn't have time for last week, which is the UFC rankings. Like, people are freaking out about how Frankie Edgar got ranked in the top 10 as number 4 in the rankings. Like, I'm cool with that. I'm cool with after Frankie Edgar like hung with Jose Aldo and arguably won two out of the 5 rounds. You can make a case to win a split decision for him anyway. Like, I'm cool with him being ranked in the top 10 despite losing and being 0-1 in the division. Brian Bowles hasn't fought in a year and 4 months.
Yeah. Well, I just want to touch on it, but one of the big things about the rankings that's been sort of weird is the methodology that goes on behind it.
Now, did you ever do the rankings at Bloody Elbow?
I never actually participated in that.
All right, so I did, and and Subo did as well. So I guess it would have been nice to have him here. The rankings are one of those things where there's two ways to rank fighters. It's you can look at historically what they've done, or you can stay current. Where it's Rashad lost to where Rashad lost to Little Nog, and so Little Nog is ranked higher than him. And so there are 2 ways to rank, but the thing is that no matter either way, there's no perfect way because Rashad lost to Little Nog, who lost to Phil Davis, who lost to Rashad.
Yeah, well, it goes back to the fight lines I used to do, where if you have a loop like that, you just sort of disregard the whole thing.
So the rankings themselves are fucked, but like honestly, dude, it went because Cruz is not fighting until 2014, probably. Who does he fight? He has to fight Eddie Wineland next, right?
Cruz?
The winner of Barao McDonald.
Yeah, I think Wineland has to be the guy.
He has to be.
He has to be. I think he's a top ranked guy that's not named Uriah Faber, and he's coming off a very impressive victory. Very impressive victory. So when
Cruz does come back, like a fight with Ivan Menjivar makes sense for him, right?
I think so.
That's a great fight. Actually, you know what? Book it.
Let's just book it.
Book it.
Let's move down to the card. The only other fight I really want to give any talking to, and we've gone about 25 minutes on this already. Dustin Poirier and Cub Swanson. A fight that a couple years ago might not have looked as exciting, just because of where their careers went. Swanson lost a really, in retrospect, a really embarrassing loss to Jens Pulver back at WEC 31, and then Poirier lost to Danny Castillo in a fight that people expected him to win. He's on a 6-1 run since then. His only loss is to Chan Sung Jung in one of the best fights of 2012. And Swanson's coming off a 3-fight winning streak with 3 knockouts over George Roop, Ross Pearson, and Charles Oliveira. This fight could determine the next guy who fights for the featherweight crown.
Oh no, it's definitely fighting. It's definitely for the next guy to fight for the featherweight title, and that's besides Anthony Pettis, who somehow Anthony Pettis, because he said that he's dropping to he's not even dropping to 145. Anthony Pettis is not dropping to 145. Like, he's gonna fight Jose Aldo, but he said like right afterwards he wants to go fight the winner of Gil Melendez and Benson Henderson. So he's not dropping to featherweight. He's dropping to featherweight for a title shot.
Yeah. Did we talk about that at all when you were around, or were you?
Yeah, we talked about it last week, and I said that look, it's a business, and it comes down to how many it could come down to how many Twitter followers you have, and Ricardo Lamas, great case. Ricardo Lamas has a real case for being number one contender.
Well, him and Chan Sung Jung, I think, both have a case.
Yeah, but Ricardo Lamas has 3,500 Twitter followers. Sorry, homie, like nobody knows who you are.
Yeah. But how do you see Swanson and Poirier going?
That's gonna be a good fight. Cub Swanson, you talk about it being in hindsight an embarrassing loss to Jens Pulver. The way Swanson, he grew up in California, and he was fighting out of California for a while, and there's no amateur level MMA in California at all. So, like, the first couple of fights of his career, like, I'll say the first 5 or 6 fights of his career, we can pretty much call those his amateur get used to fighting thing. Okay? So that brings us up to his fight against Shannon Gurdy, which he won. Charlie Valencia. He had 6 fights basically as a pro, and he lost to Jens Pulver by guillotine choke. It's not as embarrassing as it seems. And Jens Pulver at the time, when he beat Cub Swanson, not Jens Pulver, the amazing fighter, but like, that was his first fight in the WEC, and he was coming off of losses to BJ Penn and Joe Lozon. Like, Jens Pulver wasn't Jens Pulver of today. He was still Jens Pulver of yesteryear, maybe.
Yeah, and it was always tough to tell where exactly Jens Pulver fell off. I mean, after Swanson, he fought Faber, Leonard Garcia, Faber again.
He went on a 6-fight losing streak after beating Cub Swanson.
But then Josh Crispy and Javi Vasquez. I mean, those guys are all. I mean, say what you will about Leonard Garcia, but he's a young guy that can hit hard. It's a tough road to go through. And then obviously at the end of that, 3 years after fighting Swanson, he fought some guy named Diego Garrillo, and lost that, which is kind of the first one that was like, okay, what the fuck's going on with Jens Pulver?
Yeah, that was literally when everybody was like, Jens may not be as, he might have fallen off. And then, what ended up happening with Jens Pulver, and sorry for, the sidebar on this, is that Jens Pulver, towards the, he's still fighting and blah, blah, blah. But towards the end of his WEC run, he wasn't really training a ton. Like, he was going through a bunch of bullshit with the gym that he opened up in Montana that he thought was going to do well, or is Idaho or Montana? It was somewhere in Idaho. He opened up a gym in Idaho that he thought was going to do well called Driven, and he got fucked over out of money. That business failed, and then now he's having a hard time of actually training, and what he's doing is just he's playing video games online on his computer. Like, if you want to play World of Warcraft with Jens Pulver, you can do that.
Have you done that, Matt?
No, I don't play World of Warcraft because I'm not a moron or a loser. But I'm saying if you want to, you could totally play World of Warcraft with Jens Pulver.
Well, I'll keep that in mind if I ever decide to get into that habit, which I've seen.
But kind of going back and circling back, the fight between Cub Swanson and Dustin Poirier is a great fight, legit great fight.
Who you got in it? We'll make this final pick.
I'm gonna always roll with Dustin Poirier. I think that the fight with Chan Sung Jung was the it was the exception to the rule that always bet on Dustin Poirier.
For me, outside of the Pulver loss and Shannon Gurdy in his first pro MMA fight, the guys that Swanson's lost to are Jose Aldo, Chad Mendez, and Ricardo Lamas. Those guys are just obviously monsters. And on a higher level than Poirier. Obviously, Poirier, I think is a great fighter, but I'm going to go with Swanson. And I'll take him with a knockout.
Sound.
What round? I'll say round.
Oh no! What was the sound?
I don't know.
That made me feel uncomfortable. That made me feel uncomfortable, Michael.
Sorry. A lot to talk about. Let's go with the International Olympic Committee dropping wrestling.
Oh man! So I want to hear what you say first because I have a lot to say on the subject. So I want to hear you talk first.
I mean, obviously, it's bullshit. I have a tab open. There's a Deadspin article. I haven't read it yet, but you can kind of get the gist of it from the headline. The headline being, "How can wrestling stay in the Olympics? Let's start with vacations and hookers." Basically meaning that wrestling did not do as good of a job taking care of the IOC members as other sports. I believe the modern pentathlon head, whatever regulation body, made basically said that they did a very good job lobbying, which, if you have any knowledge of the Olympic system, probably means that they did a little extra effort. And it sounds like the governing body for wrestling thought that just the storied tradition would be enough to keep them in. I'm still surprised that they got taken out. I have a feeling that wrestling won't be dropped. Obviously, it has to apply for 2020 at this point, but it's really hard for me to see a sport that has so much history and also is still big in a lot of other countries, including the United States, that it will be gone from the Olympics past 2020.
So here's a couple of things. All right. So I'm gonna list some Olympic sports for you. Speed walking.
Speed walking, yes.
Modern pentathlon. Kayaking. Canoeing. And horse dancing.
Or dressage. Is that what it's called? Dressage?
Dressage. Yeah, it's dressage.
Dressage.
Right. So like here's my issue. If I'm going on a family vacation, canoeing sounds pretty rad. And if I'm going to like Colorado on the Colorado River, whitewater kayaking sounds pretty awesome. Those aren't sports. Like, I don't think anybody will ever argue with me that canoeing is a sport. Because you know what canoeing was? That was how the Indians got across rivers.
I do like
dressage. Who's the athlete in dressage?
Mitt Romney's wife.
I guess. Come on, and look, I get it. Like, FILA completely dropped the ball. Like, FILA is the governing body for international wrestling, and they completely dropped the ball by not even putting together. Like, they didn't even show up. They didn't even put together a PowerPoint presentation saying, "Hey, like the Olympics that you guys are running, they were based on the original Olympics that the ancient Greeks used to do." And wrestling was part of those and has actually been around pre-Olympics. So it's actually the oldest sport. It has to be. This is crazy. Like, it's crazy. But they didn't even show up because they thought that, like, there's no way. There's absolutely no way. So part of it is on FILA. The other thing is, like, yes, Deadspin's completely right. They didn't actually butter that bread, so to speak.
And, it's funny to me too that you listed canoeing and kayaking as if there needs to be a separate sport.
How about, the IOC thinks and not okay. So they cut wrestling, but their issue was that they look at it as that there's 14 different weight classes in wrestling as opposed to being 7 in freestyle and 7 in Greco. So they look at it as wrestling as opposed to freestyle wrestling and then Greco-Roman. Like, so they go like, you have 14 weight classes. That's crazy.
Wait, really? Was that really part of their decision making?
That was part of it.
Wow, that is. It's still insane to me to think about an Olympic.
It's mind-boggling.
A Summer Olympics without wrestling.
It's mind-boggling to me.
I would. If they had cut boxing, I would have understood. But wrestling just doesn't like.
Dressage is a sport.
Did you see? Did you watch Chael Sonnen's little rant on UFC Tonight a couple nights ago?
No, I missed it.
He basically said that this isn't good, obviously, but that this might be a death sentence for wrestling. Because it's supported so much by the Olympic Committee here in the States that without a reason for them to exist, that the whole infrastructure might just collapse.
I mean, but here's the other thing. Russia, the United States, Iran, and China are all major wrestling countries. You don't think that the IOC is going to eventually have to be like, yeah, wrestling deserves to be back in because it's Russia, China, and the United States?
Right, and I believe Japan also was another big wrestling country.
But like, basically, like, when's the last time that the United States and Iran agreed on anything?
That's a great point. That is a great. And also, when's the last time Russia, China, and the United States all agreed on something? There can't be that many topics that they all agree on.
There are not many. Like, there's actually vodka being awesome, probably.
Speaking of regulation news, there was what looks to be a positive development in New York. The lawsuit that the UFC filed, the judge decided that it was some sort of loophole involving the fact that amateur MMA isn't illegal, but pro MMA is, and that the UFC has a real good case and that it needs to be decided. Am I getting the gist of that correct?
So the loophole is that MMA is I want to explain this properly. So MMA is on the books since 1997 as being illegal. And so what ended up happening was, but it's not illegal to have the UFC, I guess, and it doesn't have to be sanctioned by the state. It just has to go through a governing body, so it can go through a third party.
Yeah.
It's a win, but it's not a win, so to speak. You know, like, it's nice. They can run fights in New York, but it's not sanctioned by New York. Like, it's not a win.
Well, and it seems like one of those things where if the UFC can get one of the third parties to sanction it, or if they're able to sanction it themselves, that New York would be better off just sanctioning it as a state and being able to take in the money from it.
Yeah, that's where it comes down to. Like, from my understanding is that they're not allowed to tax the event. Like, they wouldn't be able to get the revenue from the events.
Right.
You know, like, or like the taxes that are based on the event. Obviously, they get the tourism and all that shit, but they wouldn't get to they wouldn't get the revenue from the events that the commission would be able to get.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. You know, when that news first came out, there was a couple people that were that thought there was a real big step that the UFC was definitely going to be able to put on a fight in New York in 2013.
Oh, they can. Look. If Dana White is, and he said a couple of months ago that November he wants to run an event in the Garden. If it's set up for it, he can do it. It's just going to have to go through the WKA, which is the World Kickboxing Association, and according to their rules, you're not allowed to throw elbows. So, like, it would be modified rules MMA.
Well, I can't imagine the UFC would be that desperate to put a show on New York.
Yeah, they don't have to. Like, eventually, New York's going to have to change their law. It's a matter of when, but like, whether you do it this year, next year, or 10 years, 5 years from now, it doesn't matter. It's eventually going to become legal. The case that I would bring up is that by having unsanctioned events, and there are unsanctioned events for a decade. There's been fights like Underground Fight League, I think is what it's called. People are competing in this, and they're getting hurt, like broken noses and shit, or like collapsed orbitals. And by not having state sanctions, you're putting a lot of people in risk. So, like, you can fight in New York. If you want to have a fight in New York, you can totally do it. It's just not going to be regulated. Yeah. It's like fighting on an Indian reservation, but, like, those still have a sort of a regulatory body in the High Chief Indian Council.
Is that what it's actually called, or did you just make that up?
I just made that up.
A couple more things before we get out of here. The UFC made official Velasquez, Bigfoot 2, and Junior Dos Santos, Alistair Overeem for, I believe, the Memorial Day or Memorial Weekend show. Yep. We talked a little bit about it last week. I really like the Dos Santos Overeem fight. I don't really care for the Velasquez Bigfoot Silva fight since we saw that fight literally a year ago, and there was nothing about that fight that said Silva deserved a rematch even after beating Alistair Overeem. But what are your thoughts on it?
I said it before New Year's, like our post Christmas show, that we're going to see Junior versus Kane for years now. We'll probably see that fight like 5 or 6 times. I'd rather see those two fight again. I'd rather see Kane Jr. 3.
I don't know if...
I think there's a better argument for it.
Well, in terms of Velasquez's opponent, in terms of who fights for the title, I'd rather see Dos Santos get it. But I also am really interested to see Dos Santos and Overeem. So I don't mind it because I really like the Dos Santos Overeem fight. But like I said, I don't care for at all the Bigfoot fight.
I think my issue is that losing to Bigfoot hurts Overeem more than losing to Kane does Junior.
It's possible. I also like, though, too, that if, assuming that they both get by Bigfoot and Overeem, that they'll probably fight sometime at the end of this year. And I like the idea that every November or December, Velasquez and Dos Santos fight. And in between that, they have a fight or two before meeting up again.
That would actually be really funny. I'm actually okay with you explaining it like that. That's actually okay.
BJ Penn apparently has a cataract in his eye. He's going to have get surgery. He's talking retirement again.
I'm okay with retiring for real this time.
Yeah, I am too. I want to ask you, first of all, do you see him retiring? And then do you want him to retire?
I want him to retire.
And why? You just don't think he's got anything left to prove to anybody? You don't want to see him fight anymore?
I don't want to see him fight anymore, man. Like, I think part of it for him is a lack of motivation. He's not motivated to fight. He's not coming in great shape. He's too small for welterweight, and he doesn't want to do the legitimate training camp to get ready at lightweight. And I just don't think that he has anything left to prove. And I'd rather that he doesn't become another one of those guys who ruins his legacy. Because right now, if you look at BJ Penn as a fighter based on record, he's not a top fighter. He's not a top fighter according to his record.
Well, you have to always look at the record in context.
He's 16-9
with 2 draws.
With 2 draws, okay, with the 2 draws. My bad. So he's a draw to John Fitch. He got shit kicked by Nick Diaz, shit kicked by Rory McDonald, shit kicked by Frankie Edgar, lost to Frankie Edgar, lost to GSP, lost to Matt Hughes, lost to GSP, and lost to Lyoto Machida, and then lost to Jens Pulver. Like, it doesn't sound bad, but like, because those are all really, really good fighters. Except for the fact that he's just becoming the guy who is now just letting people build themselves off of his name. And I don't like that. I don't like that, especially because BJ Penn, he doesn't have to fight anymore. Like he's not going to chase a belt.
Well, to be fair, he's never had to fight. He comes from a pretty affluent family.
No, I don't mean.
But I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Money. I mean, like. He's not chasing, like, nothing he's going to do is going to get him a title shot. Ever.
Correct. The one thing about BJ that sort of stuck out to me when he was doing the build-up for the McDonald fight on the Fox show in December, obviously that card had been rescheduled, or that fight had been rescheduled. I believe they were supposed to originally fight in September or October. But BJ said that if they had gone on in October or September, that he wasn't in great shape, and for something happened after Rory got hurt that motivated him to get in a better shape. To me, I don't know if he was saying that to kind of play games with Rory, if that was an honest moment, but with that statement and then seeing what he looked like in the McDonald fight, and obviously McDonald is a top guy already. I don't really want to see him again. If I do see him again, I want to see him at lightweight. And I want to see him fight, a guy at his level and not a top guy that's going to blast him.
Yeah, no more of this bullshit, like, I'm going to keep fighting at welterweight. Dude, like, he looked tiny in the cage against Rory McDonald.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's 2 different BJ Penns. There's the guy who fought at lightweight who has, I believe, only 3 losses on his ledger. And then there's the guy that fought at welterweight and above who has one win or one quality win, 2 wins maybe if you count the second Hughes fight. So yeah. But we gotta get out of here, Matt. I do want to say one last thing. I am competing in a jiu-jitsu tournament on Saturday. It's my first one in almost 2 years. I think it's about 18 months. It's Combat Corner up near or in Milwaukee, and then that's kind of setting me up for March 9th, which is the Chicago Open, which is a big tournament here in the Chicago area. So yeah, so I'll have the results. I'll hopefully have video. The last time I competed, I had video of me getting my ass choked out. So hopefully I can improve on that.
Hopefully we get another video of your ass getting choked out.
Totally possible. I'm a little interested to see how I react. When I first competed, I sort of got on the mat and the referee said fight, and I immediately got into a tunnel vision where it was just me and the opponent, and everything went by real quick. And the only thing I can really remember is my coach, who was in the bleachers, fortunately right in front of my mat. I remember hearing his instructions, and that's the only thing I really remember clearly before I got tapped out. So hopefully I can improve on that, and we can talk about it next week. All
right. We have other things we got to talk about anyway, because we have to talk about Matt Hughes getting a job with the UFC and the whole Randy Couture thing. Yep. And then also Chris Cyborg.
Well, also next week we'll have UFC 157 to talk about. So.
Yep. So we have a bunch of stuff. Anyway, everybody, happy Valentine's Day. Mike, enjoy your happy ending from your girlfriend's roommate. Erica, have fun in Minneapolis with your lady friend. Bye, everybody.
See ya next week.